Welcome to cooking cheap, easy, and tasty meals.
Today we're going to make an almond flour bread, and we're going to use Vital Wheat Gluten to strengthen the dough. So to start with, we're going to prepare 320 milliliters, or a little over 1 1/4 cups of warm water. We're going to add a teaspoon of honey. The honey is for the yeast. To that, we're going to add half a teaspoon of active dry yeast. So we're going to make sure that the yeast is good before we start the bread. Next, we've got to add 280 grams of almond flour and 240 grams of Vital Wheat Gluten as part of the dry ingredients. If you haven't used Vital Wheat Gluten, it's used by bakers to strengthen the dough when the flour they have access to doesn't have enough protein in it. So we're going to add 280 grams, which I've already measured out. And we're going to add 240 grams of the Vital Wheat Gluten. Now we're going to mix these together, and then we're going to put it in a larger bowl and add the liquid ingredients to the bread. While we're at it, we ought to go ahead and add about 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. I'm just going to guess, but that's about it. Just mix it up a little bit. Once we're sure the yeast is good, then we're going to go ahead and continue making the bread. I'm going to add the dry ingredients to the bowl. And then I'm going to make a little bowl and put the wet ingredients in. I'm going to mix this up loosely. I want to make sure all the flour and Vital Wheat Gluten, all of it's moistened, but I'm not really going to mix it beyond that point. And I'm going to let the process of the gluten forming go on its own. I think I'm going to really have to use my hands to finish this, because this is going to need me to roll this around a little bit to get this right. The dough is really still pretty moist, and there's still a lot of flour that needs to be mixed in. So I'm just going to try and mix it by hand. Still have a little flour outstanding, but I think it's all going to combine eventually. If not, we can add a little more water. It won't hurt to add just a little bit of water. If you have to add water, add it about a tablespoon at a time so you don't overdo it. I don't know, we may or may not have to do that. It's slowly coming together. It's pretty wet on the inside, so I may need to turn it around a little bit to make sure that we get all the flour mixed into it. Looks like it's coming together. The flour on the sides is pretty much gone, and the bottom. So that's a good sign that the dough is mixed. Got a shaggy ball of dough, which is what we want. Now we're going to put this aside for about 12 hours. Just a little olive oil to make sure that it doesn't dry out while it's sitting here in the air, even though I am going to cover it. I'm going to let that rise for about 12 hours and we'll see where we are at that point. It's cooled off a little bit, so I think I'm just going to set it over by my stove, which is probably as warm a place as there is in my kitchen. See you in 12 hours. After a few hours, I put this in the refrigerator to let it continue rising overnight, and looks like it did a good job. I'm going to take it and fold it a little bit, push it down a little bit, get the air out of it. Frankly, it looks just like most other bread dough. Okay, the next step is to make it into a loaf and put it in to let it bake. 350 degrees. I've got a loaf pan. I'm going to spray it with a little olive oil and put the dough in it so that we can bake the bread. Flatten it out and roll it up to put it in the pan. Mostly just for shaping purposes. Okay. Pinch off the seam at the bottom. Try and get it to be a solid loaf. Drop it in the pan. And then we'll sit it and let it rise again for an hour or so. Maybe a little longer. General idea is to let it rise until it is at the top of the pan. It's been a couple hours, so I'm going to go ahead and stick this into the oven. I'm going to cook it for about 45 minutes, and we'll see what we've got. Just to be safe, I'm going to cut a couple of slits in it. I guess I'm going to cut 3 slits into it. Okay, after 45 minutes, we have a nice brown loaf. Be careful, the glass is very hot. So is the loaf. I'm going to pull it out. We can test. Hear that sound? That should be the sound of a well done loaf. It's over 195 degrees internally and browned, feels and looks good. Normally when it's done, the bottom will have a nice hollow sound. So we're going to let it cool and then we're going to cut it. So the bread is cooled. It's got a nice texture and feel. Again, sounds really good. Let's do a cut. Fairly nice, moist inside, good looking. See what it tastes like. Moist, good texture, tastes like bread. Doesn't have any almond taste at all. It's kind of good. I think I'll toast this slice and see what happens. Really chewy. Kind of a neutral flavor. Very good to put something on. If you like trying something different, this almond flour bread is really pretty good. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and give us a like. Thank you.